I'm driving on the interstate, getting home late, putting in my time just to piss it all away. I work before a living so that I can play, and when I play, I want to play my guitar. I really, really want to play. I want to play my guitar.
Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Area 312 Rock and Metal Vodcast. I'm one of your hosts, Kent, along with my co-host,
Rex.
Friends, we want to welcome back a very dear friend of ours, special guest co-host with us today from Follow the Light Music Review, Mr. John DeLaurentis. Welcome back, John.
Thanks for having me.
You bet, buddy. Friends, without further ado, regarding our very special guest today, in 1974, he was a founding member and bassist of renowned band Daniel Amos, exploring the territories of country rock, new wave, alt rock, and rock opera. Having contributed to acclaimed albums Shotgun Angel, Horrendous Disc, Alarma, and the eponymous debut, vocalist and bassist Marty Dieckmeyer has since released a plethora of songs on various avenues, including Spotify and Bandcamp. And so without further ado, we welcome our very special guest today, Mr. Marty Dieckmeyer. Welcome, Marty. It's an honor to have you.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. What an honor. Friends, a piece of, for lack of a better term, Christian rock history right here. Marty Dieckmeyer, one of the founding members of Daniel Amos, one of the very first bands that actually helped bridge that gap between what was called Jesus music and what became known as Christian rock. And so, great honor for us today. First things first, Marty. Over the years, you've been releasing singles on various platforms, including Spotify and Bandcamp. Some of your song titles include I Don't Like Dancing, My Guitar, Give Me One More Chance, and others. Marty, all these years you've been making music. You're still batting 1,000. I'd like to ask, what's been your drive, your catalyst, your muse for doing music all these years?
I'd have to say goes pretty far back into how I actually discovered, playing music and stuff. My dad was a musician, and he passed away when I was 11. We were in a car accident, and it was pretty traumatic. So in order for me to kind of connect to him, I opened his guitar case one day and started learning some of the chords out of a Hank Williams songbook. And once I started realizing I could make music, it was just extremely therapeutic for me in a way to escape the realities and also to connect spiritually somehow. I wasn't a Christian then. And so in my teenage years in high school, I was in bands. I was in stage band in high school, stage band in college, and in a lot of garage bands. And it really kept me grounded and focused and gave me an identity. When I got saved, I thought, there's no way I'm going to be able to play music anymore. When I got saved was 71. So there wasn't anything. I didn't know any Christian music, and I was super depressed about that. But then somebody gave me a Barry McGuire's record. It was called Seeds. And I thought, oh, wow. I didn't think the music was amazing, but I thought, this is awesome. There's a chance. And after I became a Christian and I was practicing and playing my bass obsessively in my apartment and wanting to be in a Christian band, I said, God, I want to be in a Christian band so bad. And I thought all I had to do was get better and better and better, and people will realize that I'm really good and want me to be in their band. Well, that didn't work. A friend of mine said, you want to play with me on a Thursday night at Calvary Chapel for, Chuck Smith's Bible study opening? And I said, okay. So we practiced and we got up there on stage, and Calvary Chapel, you got, 2,000 people. And I was scared to death. And me on bass and him on an acoustic guitar. And I screwed up so bad that I just had to stop in the middle of a song. It was extremely humbling. And I thought, I just have to get better. But then God told me, hey, put your bass away. This isn't your timing. And okay. So I put it away and just stopped playing. And then God started opening doors for me after that. But my impetus was the parable of the talents. I read the parable of the talents and I thought, okay, it's okay for me to want to do well, but I just have to put it in the right perspective. It's not about me, it's about God. So the parable of the talents made me kind of affirmed my conviction for wanting to play music. After DA, I didn't play my bass or do anything for 7 years. As a matter of fact, I gave away all my equipment except for my 62P bass, which is back there. That's the only thing I kept. And about 7 years into it, the parable of the talents came up again, and God said, hey, what's going on? I gave you a talent. You need to use it. How? Where? What? We were in a little tiny church in California that had a really good worship leader, but everybody else was really bad. And he did offer my bass playing to this guy. And I said, hey, I play bass. And he said, okay, well, what's your name? And you want to play? And I said, oh, I'm Marty Dieckmeyer. And he goes, oh, you're in Daniel Amos? I said, yeah, I was. Okay, you could play. So that kind of got me going again. And while I was at that church, I met a young woman, housewife. She was probably 23 or 24, 3 kids. She came up to me one day and said, hey, I play guitar and sing. I love the way you play bass. Oh, well, do you have anything I can listen to? She gave me a tape of one of her songs. And, oh my gosh. So her and I formed a band, and it was called Walnut Grove. And we rehearsed literally for a year because she didn't know really how to put a band together or do anything. And she had a drummer, and it wasn't, organized, the music. So we organized the music, and it was just 3 of us. We got a record deal. I went in the studio, started recording. That fell through because the owner of the record company got cancer. Then after that, I was in another band called Sway, and I put that record Sway on Bandcamp as well the other day. And that was with Jim Nicholson from Undercover, me, and Gary Olson from Undercover, and a guy named Ed Tari, who was a singer. But I just had a passion and wanted to play music all the time. Eventually, that fell through, even though we got a record deal for that as well. And I started thinking, well, Lord, why? What's going on? And I had to pull back and stop pushing. And I was seeking my own kind of fame, seeking my own desires to want to do something great and get signed and tour and be a rock star. But God just pulled the rug out from under me every single time things fell through. And after that, I just said, oh, well, forget it. I'm not going to do this anymore. And in the meantime, during all this stuff, I was learning Pro Tools, and I had a Pro Tools set up in my home. And I started taking lessons on how to mix and record and produce and get good sounds. And over a 10-year period, I bought a bunch of microphones, really good ones, good preamps and all this stuff. And I just kept thinking, why am I doing this? What's the drive here? I'm 40 years old. I'm not going to go on tour. I don't want to be famous anymore. I'm done with this. God, I just want to serve you. What can I do? And I kind of had an identity problem. What am I, God? And one day God revealed to me, I want you to be a good husband, father, and friend. I said, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to worry about being a musician and, whatever. But yet I still had this desire to want to do music. So I started recording my daughter, who went to American Idol and was in the top 45 along with Lauren Daigle. She was Lauren Daigle's roommate. And started recording her, thinking that's what I was supposed to do, but that didn't work out. And I just kept getting this, just learn, keep going, keep buying equipment. I'm going, why, what the heck? And the Parable of the Talents thing kept popping up. So long story short, I just stayed with it. And I started writing tunes just so I could practice recording myself and recording sounds. Eventually, I started getting some young people in, some people that wanted to record. And I said, I'm going to help young Christians who have good songs and a good heart and want to share the gospel. And I'm going to have them in my studio for free. And so I started doing that. And that's where I'm at now, available to help and mentor young people who want to, or even older people that have, some good songs and want to share it with the world. That's basically where I'm at.
So please forgive me, girl. Give me one more chance. I know I hurt you, baby. You know I love you, girl. So give me one more chance. I really need you, baby. Oh no, here I go. I gotta take it slow. I know you think that I'm crazy.
In the meantime, I just started writing stuff, and it was just, like I said, again, therapeutic. And I'd come in after work into my studio and just start fiddling around with ideas and things, and they turn into songs. And so I thought, well, I guess I'll release these. I really wasn't much of a singer, but my wife said, just do it. Who cares what it sounds like? I said, okay. So one of the very first songs that I sang on was I Met a Girl, and that's on Spotify. And I didn't really know how to sing, and I was just kind of sing that, but it turned out pretty good. So that's it. Thank you. And I hope the interview went well. We'll talk.
I might have one or two more questions if that's okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In a roundabout way, it did. So, Marty, it kind of sounds like maybe I can't. I would never presume to speak for the Almighty, of course. I mean, from the outside looking in, maybe it seems like maybe the Lord is preparing you or something to be like, and you kind of mentioned it, like a mentor and or producer for others with all the experience that you've had. And you're certainly a professional musician, but that's just me as an outsider looking in. But it kind of seems that way. Marty, you mentioned all the songs, and I've got to make mention, friends, that Marty and I have been connecting a little bit in preparation for this interview, and I'm strictly a physical media guy. And I asked Marty one day about something about SoundCloud, a song or two on his SoundCloud. And he's like, why are you asking me about SoundCloud? He's like, my, all the current stuff's on Spotify. And I'm like, Marty, I don't have a clue when it comes to those platforms, because I'm still physical media. But Marty, where I'm going with this is you have a host of wonderful songs here and there on these different avenues. Have you thought about compiling your songs onto a physical media release?
Like a record? A
Or
vinyl?
CD, or CD.
Or CD.
I've never thought about it. I have 35 listeners. But yeah, I've never thought about it. It seems like a lot of work. I don't know.
There are people, maybe there are others like me. I don't know. I know that, the three of us are all physical media people. Rex kind of dips a little bit into, Rex pays for
I'm digital if it's available digitally. I don't really do streaming, Marty, but I still like to buy it to support the artist. So I do several Bandcamps and that, and then put it into my iTunes library. But yeah, so I'm a little bit more of the digital guy, a little bit than John and Kent.
Yeah. If
Just if you had a campaign where you did a limited run pressing signed by Marty Dieckmeyer, I mean, here I am, So
a friend of mine, Turl, Brian, he's a drummer from England.
Yeah.
He's played on a bunch of my stuff, and I played on some of his most recent releases. And he did a Bandcamp. He was telling me, we were talking about how, not Bandcamp, but a what do you call it?
Kickstarter.
Yeah, Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't, I think I'm going to do that and blah, blah, blah. Because he's getting up there and long toothed and trying to decide his future and what's he going to do to support his family. And, so he decided to do that. And just the amount of work that he put into it seemed exhausting to me. If somebody would help me put it together, I would be more than happy to do that. But I'm not ready to pick up that. I don't know. It's hard to promote. I don't like promoting myself. Hey, look at me. My whole original intent was just to, I have a song. What am I going to do with it? Oh, I'll just put it on Spotify so my kids can see it, my grandkids later. And if somebody says, are you doing anything musically? I can say, yeah, I have Spotify. Go check it out. That's my only real intent. I wasn't doing Bandcamp until Louis McVeigh from Mustard Seed Faith just started getting on my butt and saying, Marty, put camp. You can make a few bucks. And I went, all right. And it took me a year to do that after him just kept hounding me. So.
Well, and I don't want to speak for Kent, Marty, but I don't know that Kent was actually saying do a Kickstarter campaign, but maybe just somehow there are, Christian avenues, music avenues that produce CDs and that for artists that maybe I think Kent was maybe thinking that way. But on a side note, I believe me and John did Terrell's, if I'm pronouncing his name right, his Kickstarter for his newest album. So
Yeah.
I enjoy that album. So here's two people who did his Kickstarter right in front of you.
Whose album?
Terrell, am I saying it right?
Terrell Bryan.
Terrell, yeah.
I think it's Terrell Bryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys joined it?
I joined it.
We
Yeah,
did it.
yeah.
Yeah, we supported it. Yeah, we pledged for it, and I
know him, Terrell Bryan, from the when he was with Iona, the band Iona, one of my all-time favorite bands. So, I supported that too, and Rex did too.
Yep.
Yeah, he put that together so well, and all his communications, and I just, I did that in the business world for a gazillion years and was good at it, but I crash and burn from that and don't want to do it anymore. But
Gotcha.
Consider, and if you guys want to talk afterwards about participating, that would be awesome. Or in that's listening, maybe they can reach you guys and connect me. I would love that.
Okay.
Remind me, guys, to let's talk after our questions here.
Sure.
Remind me though, because I'll forget.
Let's talk.
He's reminding us.
Somebody reminding me right now.
I'm gonna do it right now.
So, what are you doing, Rex?
I'm making a note so we don't forget to remind you after the interview.
I thought you were
to
sending
talk to Marty.
I'm like, so, Marty, let's talk about some of your current material, because those of us, again, in my eyes, you are a piece of history. Wonderful history, not only then but now in the present, because you are, for those who only know you with your work with Daniel Amos, which was tremendous and made me a fan, but you have a smorgasbord of styles that you're offering. One of your more recent songs, I noticed it in early December, it was announced the song I Don't Like Dancing. It has this smooth, easygoing sway to it. Marty, what was the catalyst? What was the muse for that song?
I don't like dancing, but I'll pick my feet up for you. I don't like dancing, but I'll pick my feet up for you. It's been a pretty long time, but I'm pretty sure I'm still down. I don't like dancing, but I'll pick my feet up for you.
Well, that was a young man from my church. He was 17, played on our worship team. And, you know, I tried to connect with these young guys, and we connected, and he had lost his father, I had lost mine. So I tried to connect with him, and we became friends. And he said he has some stuff music and stuff he's been recording. And I said, well, why don't you bring some over and let's see what you have? So he brought the idea of I Don't Like Dancing over, and it was extremely rough and some interesting sounds. And I said, what do you want to do with this? He said, I don't know. I go, well, let's write a song. He said, okay. I go, what do you want to do? He goes, well, I recently went to the prom with my girlfriend and it was horrible. And I go, well, let's work with that. So we started writing the lyrics, and we had all the lyrics done. And then I organized the sounds into verses and choruses and bridges. I added the bridge. I added a bunch of instrumentation and stuff, and it was done. And that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And so while I was looking for some old song ideas that I can work on, because I had a little itch to do something, I came across and went, oh my gosh, I forgot about this song. And so I spruced it up a little bit, added some more instrument things and took some things out. And then I re-sang it myself. And I said, oh, I'm going to release this. So that was that. And basically it's about, you know, I don't like dancing, but I don't like dancing, but I'll pick my feet up for you. It's the verses are going through this horrible thing. This guy is kind of antisocial, but yet here he is in a suit driving to the prom with his girlfriend, and it just anti all this stuff. But he's doing it because he loves her and cares about her. And so that's what that song's about. Doing something for a loved one, even though you hate it.
That's what I love about music, is expressing things in an artful way instead of just, you could have just said it like that, but you expressed it in a very artful manner, and it's very neat. And then Marty, the song "My Guitar," it has this intriguing bounce, a little hint of funk, if I may say. There's these horn-like sounds. I'm guessing those are from keyboards, but the song title, "My Guitar," it reminded me of your story about your dad. And you tell the story about that D chord, making that D chord and everything. And Marty, was it your dad? And you expressed his love for Hank Williams. Was your dad your primary musical influence in your life?
He was the impetus that pushed the boat out into the harbor. But as I was sailing out into the ocean, I was discovering all these other fish, if you will. I want to use that metaphor. So, no, but he wasn't my primary influence, but it was definitely the reason why I got started.
Okay. Well, who were some of your musical influences then, as far as maybe some artists who influenced you?
Wow. In my younger days through high school, music was huge. And I was really into a lot of the blues stuff, the British blues and blues invasion. But if I can go back to when I was about 9 or 10, the 145 record that blew my mind was "I Want to Hold Your Hand." Mm. I had one of those little box 45s, you open it up and you put your 45 on it. And I had a 45 by, I can't remember who it was, but the song was, I'm a long, tall Texan. I ride a big white horse. He is a Texan on a, that song, I don't know if you know it,
I
but
know.
old song from back in the day. And I played that all the time, and I accidentally broke it one day. And I went to my mom, oh, I broke my 45. I want another one. And she said, okay, honey, I'll go down to Music City, whatever it was called, and get you one tomorrow. I go, okay, hurry up. So there to the music store and came back with the 45. He says, honey, I didn't get that record for you. What? Hold on, listen. The man said this was the best record, up and coming, a new band, and they're amazing, and all the latest trend, and blah blah blah, and said that you would love it, and if you don't, we can return it. And I went, okay, and I put it on, and I thought, oh my gosh. What hit me was the sound, the raw sound, the energy in the raw sound, and the tones of the guitar and drums, and the vocals and the energy. It just blew me away. So later, British blues bands, John Mayall, Eric Burden, Johnny Winter, early Fleetwood Mac, Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks, the Allman Brothers, obviously early Zeppelin, James Gang with Joe Walsh. What else? Earth, Wind and Fire. Not Earth, Wind and Fire, but they were later. But what was it called? Blood, Sweat and Tears. Shuggy Otis, Super Session, all that kind of stuff. It just was amazing. And then later, when I was in DA, I was really into jazz. A lot of jazz stuff. I don't know how I transitioned into that. But Alex McDougall and I became friends, way before he was in DA, and we were hanging out a lot. And he was really into Latin jazz, Brazilian jazz, percussion stuff. So he introduced me to Weather Report. So I fell in love with Jocko and Weather Report. And we went and saw Flora Purim, which is a Brazilian jazz singer, Ayrton, who is a percussionist. And then we went and saw Weather Report a couple times. And then we just started trading records and stuff, like Earl Klug, and then what was that? Lee Ritenour. I was really into Lee Ritenour, the Jazz Crusaders, a bunch of jazz stuff. And unfortunately, my gray matter is decaying, so I can't remember stuff very well. But I was really into jazz when I was in DA. It was kind of odd. And I remember going and seeing Jocko play and at the Roxy Theater in LA, and I was probably 15 feet away from him. And I was like, this the whole time, what he did to the bass. The next day, DA, I was depressed. I thought, I'm just going to quit. I'm not good. The next day, DA went and played at a high school, and we played at their lunch, and we played right outside of a classroom on a corridor, a sidewalk, and it was cold. And I had my bass, and I'm going bam, 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 bam. After hearing Jocko doing all this amazing things, and I felt so deflated. But those are my some of my influences.
Well, you could have fooled me, Marty, because I own the albums that you played on, and I'm a fan. So, Marty, the current songs that you're bringing to the table, they range from the upbeat, such as "Give Me One More Chance," to I'm going to call this one a little bit of the alternative, the song "Snowflake," to somber, "See Me, Here I Am." And then you had also talked about with your band Sway, there was a single that you put out recently, "When She Was Mine." You mentioned that was with you and Jim Nicholson and Gary Dean Olson. I am an Undercover fan. How did you know Gary and Jim from years back, or how did you meet up with those guys?
Yeah, I knew them. This guy, Ed Tari, was doing this record, and Tom Roy was producing him and working with him. And they had a couple bass players doing these songs, and that just wasn't working. So Tom Roy called me and asked if I could come in and play bass on this guy's record. So I did. And the guy loved what I did and asked if I would join the band, which I did. And then we just started rehearsing and working on his material and getting it tight and organized, and started mixing it. But that's how I did it. It was through Tom Roy. He asked me to come in and do a session for the guy.
Well, very cool. And I was pleased to learn that, because again, undercover fan from way back and DA fan, pleased to see that you all worked on that project together. And Marty, at this juncture, I'd like to rewind just a year or two back to, I think, when you were maybe 19. You joined, from my understanding, the band Daniel Amos at 19 years of age. I'd like to ask Marty, how did it come to transpire that you joined Daniel Amos? How did the band get together?
Yes, William, the kids were cruel, but I saw something different in you. The impression you made put the seed in me that began to grow when I first believed. Oh, William, on the street, him singing, testifying, and they called him.
Well, this is going to be a long, sir. When I got saved as a musician, there wasn't any music. I already mentioned that. It was kind of depressing. And I went to college and I was in the jazz band, and I wanted music to be my career, but I felt like I couldn't do that as a Christian. I met a couple guys in college that were Christians, and I really wasn't grounded anywhere before I met these guys, and they invited me to their fellowship, and I ended up going to their church and their fellowship. And really, that's when I really started learning about the Lord, and I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit and really got connected and found my way with Christianity. And they knew I wanted to play music really bad. And one day I was sitting at my piano and I was playing the piano, and I just kind of went off in a trance, like almost like I had a vision. I had a vision that I was standing on a stage. The view was from behind, and I could see these, silhouettes of four guys, and all these beautiful harmonies and people, huge thousands of people in the audience singing along and worshiping and getting saved. And I was going, wow, what is that? When that vision went away, and later, later that I realized that was DA after I was in DA. But anyway, while I was going to this fellowship, this church, one of the guys there said, hey, my sister is going up to go to San Jose Bible College, and can you drive her up there with your truck and her bed and all that stuff? Can you, and we'll give you gas and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And I said, okay, sure. And I was really depressed at this time, because I was just like, oh gosh, Lord, what am I going to do? I was depressed, literally depressed. And we drove up there, San Jose Bible College, dropped her off. And he said, yeah, we're going to go over to an apartment of mine, some friends, and they're musicians too. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So we went to this apartment and walked in, and that's where we were going to sleep. And, I'm going to sleep on the floor. And I was like, whatever. And there are all these guys in there, and it was on the San Jose Bible College as well. And a guy walks in, and it was Steve Baxter. And he goes, my buddy Craig says, hey, Marty, this is Steve Baxter. He's in a band, a Christian band. And he goes, Steve, this is Marty. He plays bass. Oh, hi, Marty. We're in a Christian band and blah, blah, blah. Where do you live? I go, I live down in LA. And he goes, oh, we're going to move down to Orange County and join Maranatha. And I said, oh, whoop-de-doo. Okay, wow. I kind of didn't really know what Maranatha was at the time. And he said, we should get together and jam when we get down there. And I said, yeah, whatever. So I get back to my town in LA, and my buddy at that fellowship encouraging me to, he said, let's go down to Maranatha Music and you can sign up and join Maranatha Music. And I said, what? What do you mean? He goes, yeah, they put bands together and make records. Why don't you go down there and join them? Whatever. He goes, I don't want to. He goes, come on, we're gone. He throws me in the car, drives me down to Maranatha Music, which is a little storefront office. And he goes, walk in there and sign up. I said, all right. So I walk in there, and there's a girl sitting there, and she's talking to some guy. And can I help you? And I go, yeah, I want to sign up. Just sign up. What do you mean? I go, well, I'm a bass player. I want to sign up and to join a band. Oh, we don't do that. We only promote bands that are already together and everything. And I went, oh, shoot. All right. Because let me have your name and number. And if anybody wants a bass player, I'll let them know. I said, okay. So I turn around and walk out, and I'm super depressed, even more, ready to get the razor blades out. And the guy that was standing there comes out and goes, hey, Marty, I'm in a band and we need a bass player. I go, oh. He goes, you want to come down tomorrow and jam with us? I said, okay. So I did, jammed with them, and I joined that band. It was called Captain Salvation. And so I joined Captain Salvation. It didn't do anything or go anywhere, and a bunch of cool guys and stuff, but it never worked. And now I'm in Orange County and going to Calvary Chapel because of that move. And one day I run into Steve Baxter. And he goes, hey, what are you doing? You want to come and jam with us? He said that the bass player they had at the time was Kenny Paxton, wanted to play piano and bass. And so they knew I played piano and bass. So I was going to go and switch off with Kenny. And so I went to the rehearsal. I showed up, and they said, oh, Kenny quit. So now we just need a bass player. Is that okay? And I said, sure. So we jammed on a couple songs, and I wasn't very impressed. I was like, I wasn't interested in joining the band at all. And so I'm packing up, and they said, do you want to join the band? And I said, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to get out of it. I said, if you change the name, because they were called Jubal's Last Band at the time. And I said, if you change the name, and, I didn't think the drummer was very good. And this is really mean of me to say this. But I said, and if you get rid of the drummer, then I'll pray about it. The good old bail me out. I'm going to pray about it line. So I didn't think they would ask me. And the next day they said, or actually a few hours later, they said, yeah, we don't mind changing the name, and we're going to let the drummer go because, we didn't think it was that good. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm in the band. And then, but the thing that actually brought it home was Terry gave me a cassette of 5 songs, and one of them was Ain't Gonna Fight It. And I put it on to learn it. And I'm not kidding. I literally fell on the ground worshiping, blown away at how powerful that song was. And I went, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So that's when I realized that, God anointed the band.
Very cool. Very cool. Marty, Daniel Amos, to myself as a fan, just my opinion, Daniel Amos was perhaps the first alternative Christian rock band before alternative was even a term. Did Daniel Amos, did you all have a mission from the get-go, or were you guys simply about being in a band with the understanding that Jesus is Lord?
Oh, yeah. No, it was all about Jesus is Lord. That's how it started. And it was super powerful at the beginning. I think for me, I sensed that Jesus is Lord, for me, seemed to wane on what the real purpose of the band was. That was always there. We were always Christian. We were always seeking God, but the intensity of it seemed to wane, and other desires, I think, kind of crept in. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to leave the band. I just didn't see the vision and the mission being as powerful and strong as it used to be, as it was at the beginning.
So you were with Daniel Amos through 4 incredible albums. The eponymous album through Alarma. And whereas over the course of those 4 albums, I had witnessed Daniel Amos morph from shall we say, a country rock band into a rock band, into a guitar-driven new wave band by the time of of Alarma. And Marty, I don't know how to really ask this question, but given those different genres there, from the country rock into the rock into the guitar-driven new wave, was the foundation rock and roll, or was the foundation more country?
Well, at the beginning, it was easy to do the country. There was just 4 of us, Jerry, Steve, Terry, and me, and acoustic guitars, electric, and bass. So the writing, Terry, I actually lived with Terry for about a year, and he would every morning be up at like the crack of dawn, reading and writing, and was super dedicated to his craft, and was always doing something musically and writing, and some intellectual gymnastics, and it was pretty impressive. But because of the limitations of just the 4 of us, the songs we did were catered to that setup. When Steve quit the band, well, actually, Mark Cook joined the band when Steve was still in the band, but then Steve quit, and Mark brought a whole new formula, a whole new ingredient into the band with his keyboard experience and his writing ability. And so the ideas started bouncing around more. We were much better at crafting songs and working on them and arranging them. And it just kind of started opening up to where Shotgun Angel became the concept of Shotgun Angel. The ideas and thoughts and everything about that all happened while we were touring on the road. Mark and Jerry and Terry came up with this idea and started crafting songs for him. I think they had 2 or 3 songs, like what's the first one on there?
Days and Nights.
Yeah, Days and Nights. They had Days and Nights, and then they had I think Sky King, and the last one
on Alarma, or
and so I think they already had those songs written, and they thought, wow, we can make a rock opera kind of thing. So they started putting songs together that cater to that. And then we go, wow, and then we started really working on making it all happen and come together musically. But yeah, Mark brought a whole new ingredient into the band that made it kind of blossom out.
Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Well, it just amazes me the variety of the catalog, especially among those first 4 albums, where you can see that there was something that ushered the band along into these different styles. I mentioned this earlier. I see Daniel Amos as part of a very select group that was the bridge from the former Jesus music into the what would later be called, Christian rock and everything. Marty, because you guys are a piece of history there. I don't know exactly whom your crowd was, if it was more the church crowd or the mainstream, but whether the mainstream or the church crowd, were people openly receptive to the music of Daniel Amos at that time? Because at the time, I mean, all of that was avant-garde at the time.
Oh yeah, there was we were gaining, new followers and hanging on to some old ones, but the first record was so country that we went to Shotgun Angel, and that was acceptable because that was kind of like country rock. Then we went to Horrendous Disc, and a lot of people really appreciated it and were like, oh, wow, blown away by it. But a lot of people were disappointed that we weren't true hardcore country. And I remember we went to a Harvest crusade with Greg Laurie in Hawaii, and we did two of them. The first one we had our first record and Shock and Angel, and then the second time we went with them, we had Horrendous Disc, and we're playing more of Horrendous Disc stuff, and the powers that be wanted us to be more country, and it kind of created a little bit of tension, because we didn't want to do that. We were evolving away. We still played some of those songs, one or two or three here and there, but the majority of our stuff was our new stuff. So, yeah. And then the last record I was on, Alarma, it ended up just being the four of us because Alex McDougall quit the band, and Mark. And so it had to be more of a guitar driven band. I played a little bit of the keyboards here and there, but it wasn't as keyboard heavy. So again, we had to adjust to what we had become, just a 4-piece band again.
Marty, on your eponymous debut, I'd like to get your thoughts on one song in particular, because in my humble opinion, as a fan, I feel like amidst because the debut leans a little bit more toward the countryside rather than the country rock. But there's one song in particular, and as a Steely Dan fan that I am, I absolutely, I feel like this song peeks the curtain back just a little bit into what was ahead in the future. Tell me your thoughts about the song "Don't Light Your Own Fire."
Yeah, that was definitely probably a Steely Dan influenced song. Of course, I can't speak to the writing of it because Terry wrote it, and but we wanted the vibe to be a Steely Dan-ish kind of style or a feel, and we had studio players. It was, I played bass, Jerry on guitar, but we had Dave Diggs we had this female jazz pianist playing the electric piano and another drummer. And that really kind of pushed it into that vibe. And we liked 10cc, Don't Light Your Own Fire. What's that song? I'm Not in Love. The way they did their vocal parts, that, you know what I'm talking about? Right. I'm Not in Love, they had the background vocals doing all these chords and stuff. And we kind of wanted that feel on that song. And I think we captured it a little bit, but probably not as much as we had hoped for. But yeah, that was, we liked this. We were definitely into Steely Dan and 10cc at the time.
To me, that was just a exemplary track on a great album. Full confession here, Marty, I was late to the party with DA. I was a headbanger back in the 80s and a wee lad in the 70s. Although
air banging your head.
I banged it so hard it all fell out, you know. So, but Marty, I was late to the party with DA. In fact, it wasn't until 1993's Motorcycle album that was my first album to pick up. But even though I was late to the party, when I came to the party, I partied hard with DA. In 1995, a friend handed me what was to be my second DA offering that I discovered, and I was smitten with side one of Shotgun Angel, hearing Days and Nights, the wonderful vocals. And to me, it's like this progressive country rock song. It's country rock, but it's progressive because there's some time signature changes and twists and turns. And then I hear the title track, Shotgun Angel, and I'm like, you know, I know that was a Bill Sprouse cover, but you guys made it your own and it rocked. When I flipped Shotgun Angel over, well, what would have been side two, I didn't flip the CD over, but when I came to what would be side two, and we had the Bereshith Overture, or in the Hebrew, the Breshit Overture, I was floored. It's this rock opera, and not just for a quote unquote Christian rock band, but you guys, for any band, it was just done dynamically, brilliantly, beautifully. And I was absolutely floored because that was in 1977. Marty, whenever, you know, I didn't want to give that album back to my friend, but Thou Shalt Not Steal, it's not just a suggestion, so I did have to give it back. Got my own. When you heard the playback in the studio, Marty, or whenever you were laying down the tracks for that album, especially that rock opera, did you know that you had something brilliant on your hands?
We were hoping.
Man.
We turned all the lights down in the Studio B at Martin Sound and played it, and we were just like shocked at how well it came together and blown away by it. And we were wondering, how are people going to think? What are they going to think about this? I hope they like it. Maranatha Music was hounding us at the time to hurry up and finish. We can't give you any more money, you know, stuff like that. Jonathan Brown went to bat for us and said, no, you guys, you don't know. Well, we want to come and hear it. No, you can't. You can't hear it. So yeah, we were pretty blown away by it, but we also were not sure how it was going to be received because it was so out there, you know, so different. But
Brilliant piece of work. Brilliant piece of work.
Was the voice of Jesus, and I heard him say, got an angel riding shotgun, and he's riding with you all the way. Yeah, yeah.
Whereas Shotgun Angel blew the roof off the place, especially under the roof of, you know, no disrespect, but the church. Horrendous Disc was simply out of this world, Marty. Circa 1978, correct me on the date if I'm wrong, you guys recorded the incredible Horrendous Disc album at the time for Solid Rock Records. And I'd like to remind our viewers, and just for us here, here's a question that would require a little more candor. Reminder that we do have that pass button on the table. I'm a fan who has questions. As far as my understanding about the history of this incredible album, Solid Rock Records delayed the release for nearly 3 years. And Marty, you are a direct source. I would simply like to ask, what do you attribute, if you could respond, what do you attribute to this delay?
We recorded that under Maranatha Music.
Okay.
So we did it at Whitefield Studios, which was Maranatha Music Studio. And we wanted it to sound more commercial, more professional, more mainstream as far as the tones and the production. So we asked Mike Stone, who was not a Christian, to engineer and co-produce it with us. While we were recording it, Maranatha Music had things that they wanted in there and things they didn't want in there, and the artwork and all things that we didn't agree with. And so when all the masters were all done and mixed and everything, we parted ways with Maranatha, and they said we could have the masters and go wherever we wanted. So bless them for that. So we went shopping. Where are we going to go? And we always liked Larry Norman's
Solid Rock.
Yeah, Solid Rock, and they had Street Level Artist Agency, and we liked the way that they were being represented and the vision, the vibe, the whatever that they set off. They were strong Christians, but they were the groovy, cool, hip, cutting edge, on the edge artists, not Amy Grant or anything like that. And so we wanted to go with them. And Larry was wining and dining us, and we all thought it would be good to do. And one thing that I noticed, I said, you guys, everything Larry has, it says produced by Larry Norman or executive producer Larry Norman or whatever. And I asked Larry in a meeting once, and I said, Larry, even though we produce this and it's all done, are you going to put on there that you produced this? All the guys in the band were like, oh, Marty, how could you ask such a question? Because I'm straightforward and, I don't. Yeah. Oh, no, you guys already did this and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, great. So he pressed the record, and on the label it said, not produced by, but something along those lines by Larry Norman. I thought, oh gosh, here we go. This is not going to be good. And why it wasn't released, there's so much speculation. Only Larry knows. But he had a distribution deal with Word Records. I don't know if Larry owed them money or if they owed him money or what, but it seemed like it was some sort of a money thing. And again, but I have no idea. All I could do is speculate. It was really, really frustrating. And he kind of led us along, taking the pictures and doing all the photos and talking about artwork. And he could sense our frustration. And we at that time too, when Horrendous Disc was being held up, the six of us in the band were starting to do a lot more crossover kind of music, and we're playing in all these famous clubs in LA and getting a lot of attention. And we had 5 major record labels at Madame Wong's one night all offer us a contract to sign with them. And Larry and Street Level advised us not to, which we didn't do. But in the meantime, we were still being strung along. So that was super frustrating. So to tell you the truth, I really don't know why. I don't think anybody does. And again, if anybody does know, say they know, they don't. You can only speculate.
Understood.
Undisturbed too. That was not Freudian. That was
I do have one other question, Marty, and then we'll move along with, the album is so great. I mean, and all of those first four albums for what they are great in their own right. But, I could only surmise that Horrendous Disc, who would not want that album out there on their label? And I understand what you told me about there might have been some monetary hangups with some distribution or whatever. I would think though that whomever had control of that, they would want that album out there because, boy, at the time that's a hot ticket right there. Marty, another great album and another different type of an album. Alarma sets itself apart from the incredible Horrendous Disc because Alarma is this guitar-driven new wave sound. It differs in scope. You guys were this tour de force of music back then, and 1981's Alarma, it became known as the first of a four-part Chronicle Alarma series. Marty, it's understood that later at, I believe around September of 81, you had chosen to leave the band. But when you guys were beginning the work on, because you did record the Alarma album, I'm curious, was it known to you while you were still in the band, this plan? Was it planned all along, hey, we're going to work on this four-part Chronicle series? Or is that something that came into being after your exit?
Oh, no, that was after Horrendous Disc. It was something that Terry, Mark, and Jerry, they were the main writers and the main ideas that came. They would bring it to the rest of us. The rest of us was me, Ed, and Al. And, we would work on the stuff. One of my strong points in the band was arranging, and let's cut that out there. Let's do this here. Let's, not have that there. Well, contributing in that way. But that was all, definitely the Alarma Chronicles and a book that Terry was writing along with it, something that he really wanted to do. So that had been in the works, and that was definitely going to be the first part of it. And, but like you said, I left before any of that could really come to fruition. But that was just all part of Terry's creativity, his genius, if you will. I always hated that. He's a genius. No, he's not. He's Terry. He's just the guy that snores next to me while we're on tour. But no, I could look back now and just see how gifted he was, how gifted the band was, and how the ingredients make the end result, So, the Alarma Chronicles was pretty exciting, and I was looking forward to that. But again, I left the band.
Well, Marty,
Get off my screen. There, something was on my. I was due for another loan.
Marty, what was the catalyst for you singing on this wonderful album? You sang the lead vocal on Props, and it's credited as reluctant lead vocal. Marty, why the reluctance?
Well, you have to think, I always wanted to sing, but I didn't know how. And you have these three guys that could sing like the Beach Boys. And I get up there and I go, I think, forget it. I don't want to sing. I can't do this. But Terry wanted the song to be about a guy who, ding, 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 about, his girl or something.
Yeah.
So he wanted it to be a regular guy. So he asked if I wanted to do it. And I said, no, I don't want to do it. He goes, are you sure? Because if you don't want to do it, I'm going to ask Ed. And all right, I'll do it. I'm nervous as heck, and I get in the studio, and he starts playing it, and he's singing along, and I'm singing along, and he goes, "Oh, no, we need to change the key." So he changed the key to where it was hard for me to sing it in my natural voice. And so thus you could hear me cracking and slipping, and I picture her, I picture her. He goes, "No, you can't do falsetto." I go, "Oh, okay." So that was that. And he wanted to do it live, but I was just too embarrassed. I go, "No, I don't want to do it live." Anyway, that's the story behind that song.
It was perfect. I mean, it's part of the charm. Everything was perfect.
I actually played that in my wedding at my second marriage that I'm still married my wife to now 38 years later. As we were walking down the aisle as a married couple leaving, that was the song.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Marty, let's talk about, and I'm uncertain if this is on the Horrendous Disc tour leading into Alarma or at some juncture early in the Alarma atmosphere there. Let's talk about the beach-bound bassist look, complete with short shorts and flip-flops. Marty, is there any way that you can bring that back?
What's that? A photo?
There's photos of you, man. You're awesome. You got your bass and your shirts like down to here. You're wearing these short shorts and these flip flops, and you're just working it on stage. And I'm like, you are the man.
Well, somebody gave me some grief about that, and I found a photo of Jay Truax with shorts on and beat and flip flops and his bass playing as well. So I put them side by side and say, "See, I'm not the only one." At the time, I was living right on the beach, and I body surfed every single day for hours, and just loved it. And it was just the more comfortable way, And that gig, I think, was in Oceanside at an outdoor gig in Oceanside at a Shell, on the beach. So I said, all right, it's on the beach and Shell. I'm just going to go in my shorts and my flip flops, and did it. I remember one time there's a photo of me up in, I think, Redding, California, where I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt and barefoot, playing, and another one with me without a shirt on.
Well, that's awesome. You have these big shades on, and I could just picture you just walking up and a roadie handing you your bass and you just nonchalantly getting with it.
I was like, I got to go down to Oceanside and do this gig. All right. So I drove down there. We didn't get in the van. We just drove our own cars because it was only like an hour away. Pull up, and, our roadies and everybody had everything set up, and get on stage, do the sound check, and boom. And then just 30 minutes later played. So yeah. And then left.
Marty, can you tell us any funny stories or any interesting things from being on the road?
The famous story, we were on like a 5-week tour, and we all wanted to go home so bad. And you're playing the same set pretty much, maybe change 1 or 2 songs out. So it verbatim, and you're playing 3-4 nights a week. So our very last gig we're doing, and I can't wait for it to be over. And I'm over there playing, doing my thing, not engaging, smiling, or doing anything to the crowd. I just wanted it to be over. So hour and a half after we're done, hour and a half, it's over. I go out to the edge of the stage and we sit down. We would sit down and people would come up and talk to us. And a group of about 6 people come up. And one guy's holding the Bible and he goes, "Brother, I just don't know why you don't express the love of Jesus on your face. You look like you're just so, I don't know. Where's the love of Jesus?" And I was like, oh my God, I want to kill this guy. And I'm sitting there like this, and I look up and I said, "I wish I can, brother. I wish I could do that." He's like, I said, you see, when I was young, I got in a car accident. My face went through the windshield. And it was so damaged, they took out most of my smiling muscles. So I really can't smile. And that's why I have this beard, to hide all the scarring. And he was like, I'm so sorry, brother. I'm so sorry. I didn't. I go, and I just started busting up. Just joking. I'm just joking. It's just couldn't help myself. I said, I know I need to do that, but I'm so tired. I can't wait to get home. You know, anyway, I could see the guys relieved.
Oh, Marty, goodness gracious.
Down to the city on a country road I rode. I let her know I'd be coming soon. I picture her in a flower dress and hat. I really like that. I'll have to tell her so.
Marty, it's understood that Christian-oriented bands get the short end of the stick when it comes to notoriety. When it came to notoriety and compensation, you all, the Christian artists, by and large, got the short end of the stick. And I'm very sorry about that, because I believe in the biblical principle that a worker deserves their wages. And aside from that, and I know that this didn't pay the bills, but Daniel Amos has always and will always be revered for being way ahead of the curve and avant-garde with the music that you brought. As such, Marty, being as you guys always set the bar extremely high, another pass button question if we need to, but I'm just curious, what, if I may ask, from my understanding, you had left DA circa September of 1981 to start a landscaping business. If I may ask, what prompted you to say at that juncture, I think I'm going to go elsewhere?
I knew this question was coming. There's a lot of things that play into that. I was watching your interview with Brian Duncan and Randy, and they gave a good answer. So you want to refer to that? That's why. I'm kidding. I'll recap. As the band went on in years, I became less involved in decision making, not by choice, but because it ended up being that way. Terry was the lead singer and the main writer. Everybody reverted to him. So he was making a lot of the choices for the band, and they just weren't. I knew and realized probably about a year before I quit that, these decisions and choices that are being made are affecting my personal life in a way that isn't going to benefit me now or in the long run. And so I decided to leave, and it wasn't, I wished I didn't leave. I didn't have to, but it was because of me just becoming like a backup bass player instead of being integral part of the band. And also I didn't care for the direction of the music anymore. It was kind of going, to me, it seemed like it was alienating more people than supporting our current, people that liked us. To me, it just seemed more alienating. But that was just my own personal reasons why. And that, I had just gotten married to my first wife, and I realized I can't do this. I'm not going to, I can't be in a tour bus driving around the country supporting somebody else. You know, it was no longer a band to me. It was supporting Terry. He just said, here's what we're doing. You know, it wasn't like, you guys, what do you guys think about this? What do you think about that? So, and at that time, it was just Terry, me, Jerry, and Ed. So that's it.
Gotcha. Well, Marty, I noted that. So my next question is going to be if you still stay in touch with any of your former bandmates from DA, and I also noticed that roughly, a few years back, not too many years ago, but you were laying down some bass for Terry Taylor's song "The Meek," and possibly some other songs. Um, there's probably still the bond of friendship and everything there. Do you still stay in touch or get to keep in touch with some of your former bandmates?
Yeah, I do. I feel the most comfortable, with Jerry. Jerry and I stayed in touch a lot. He's actually played on a couple songs. I also, by the way, if you look up my YouTube channel, Marty Dieckmeyer on YouTube, I have 1 or 2 songs on there that aren't anywhere. They're just stupid, funny songs. But Jerry played on one of those, and we would stay in touch. Jerry lives in Nashville, so whenever the NAMM show was happening in Anaheim, California, Jerry would come out, and I made a point to see him and have dinner with him and hang out and talk. And so I did that a lot with him. Ed lives in Atlanta, I think, and I found out he was coming out to California, so we hooked up and had a beer over somewhere together and talked for hours and stayed in touch that way. Terry and I have gone back a lot with emails and texting and kind of getting out some of the nasty stuff and forgiving each other for the way we were, for being young, and stupid. And so because of that, we can now chit chat and encourage each other, as we age and realize that we're, mortal and sinful.
Sure.
So, yeah. And then the Meek thing, I did another thing, just part of the choir on one of the DA things. So they asked me to do Meek and asked if I would record video record it. So I did. And that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you were laying down that groove, and I remember watching that and thinking that was all right, So
I would actually do write with Terry, and just him and I do 3 or 4 songs. So Terry, if you're listening, send me a couple of song ideas that I can work on for you. I'd love to do that.
Marty, what do you hope that your songs convey that others might glean from them?
What do I hope the songs that are out there, what I hope people can glean from?
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm telling a personal story in a lot of my stuff, and I listen to my songs, and sometimes they're pretty singing about personal things, like Another Lover is about my first wife, what happened with her. And I didn't plan on singing that. I had all the music, and I said, this is really cool music. I'm going to have to come up with some lyrics. So I just sat down and put a mic up, and those lyrics just flowed out. And I was like, oh, I guess that's it. So I don't know if anybody could connect somehow and be personally healed or be encouraged or relate somehow to it, any of my songs in their own personal way. give them a little encouragement for the day, a little bit of happiness, maybe some truth about what God's like. And it's okay to struggle with things like that song, See Me, Here I Am. I'm questioning God, saying, God, here I am. Do you see me? I haven't heard from you. The mountains haven't moved. Why should I believe? Those are heavy duty things that we all deal with, I think, as believers.
Yes. Marty, if you could make a brief statement to leave a lasting impression with your friends and your fans, what would you wish to tell them?
Let's go eat. I have no idea. I'm not that deep. Lasting impression. I just think, life is hard. It's easy to blame God on something that happens. Both my parents died in front of me. My dad, I wasn't a Christian, died right in front of me. I didn't blame God. My mom, when she died, I was a Christian. I didn't blame God. I got a divorce. I didn't blame God. My fiance, before my very first marriage, ran off with some guy and got pregnant. I didn't blame God. I had a bankruptcy, lost everything, lived in the garage, me and my wife and my youngest daughter. I didn't blame God. God molds us and shapes us into who we are. And I was reading this morning in Matthew, and Jesus is speaking in parables. And the disciples are saying, why do you speak in parables? And he said, it's for people that want, essentially, I looked into why was he speaking in parables? And essentially it said, paraphrasing it, is people who want to hear the truth are going to hear it. And people who don't want to hear it because they have to make changes aren't going to hear it. So when bad things happen in our lives, we can still hear God, or we can choose not to hear God. Because if a bad thing happens and we blame God, we can't hear him anymore. People fall away and don't follow God anymore because there's bad things in the world. I think that's a bunch of crap. Yeah, there's bad things in the world because, we're sinful in nature. And it's not because of God, it's because of people. Well, why doesn't God change it? Well, because you have free will and you'll become a robot. Anyway, I guess that would be what I have to say.
Thank you, Marty. And John and Rex, before we wind down to our message from home, is there any questions that y'all would like to ask Marty that we hadn't touched on?
Well, I just want to say, I've never met Marty before, but I can just tell, he's just real. You're getting the real Marty here. I just really appreciate that. And I just appreciate his candor and just, telling it like it is. That's kind of like how I try to be. And so I just appreciate that, Marty. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. We are so thrilled that you are spending time with us, and just thank you so much. And God bless you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
John, anything you'd like to ask Marty or mention?
No, I think same as what Rex said. I appreciate the honesty, and that I think what Marty just said about blaming God, not blaming God for bad things that happen, is an extremely important thing to understand in Christianity. That there are bad things that are going to happen because we're living in a sinful world and we are sinful. But you can't blame God, and God, and in my own life when that things have happened, because I went through a lot of difficult things in my life too. On looking back at it, I see exactly that God used those things, so he allowed those things to happen. And we don't know when we're going through it what the purpose is, but oftentimes we see later on that's why God allowed that to happen, and I've seen some of those things make my relationship with God closer because I went through those things. So I think he uses both. He molds us. And so, yeah, the first response, we want to do is we want to blame God, but I've learned now, because my life's verse is all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. So that's what I have to stop myself and say, if this is happening, there's got to be a purpose, a greater purpose, So I appreciate, what you said, because I agree with that.
Sometimes it's easy, well, when we go through the valleys, God, you're God. It's easy for you, I mean, we're going through all this crap as people, and you're God. So what do you know, God, about hurting and pain? And then I have to remember that Yeshua is the visible image of the invisible God.
Yeah.
He's 100% God and 100% man. And God was on this earth and walked the earth. And we whipped him and we beat him and we crucified him. He knows everything. He was mocked, ridiculed, and scorned long before that. He knows everything about pain, and we're his most beloved creation, created in his image, and today as people as a whole. We still blaspheme him and
yeah, it's interesting is that, you got to be reminded Jesus didn't want to do that. He asked if it could be any way we can not do this. Plus, he sweat blood.
Yeah.
He was so stressed out. I mean, it's gnarly. We forget about that.
Well, Marty, at the end of every program, we always, it's called the Message from Home. We just take a very brief portion of scripture as it correlates to something the artist has done, whether a song title, an album title, some lyrics. And Marty, I took note, especially of your song, See Me, Here I Am. And you mentioned about, during hard times, God, I'm searching, where are you? And Marty, it just reminded me of this verse of scripture, that song, See Me, Here I Am, from Jeremiah 29:12 and 13. It says this, and this is Adonai, this is God talking. When you call to me and pray to me, I will listen to you. When you seek me, you will find me, provided you seek for me wholeheartedly. And what I'm thankful for, Marty, is Adonai, the true and living God. Because, see, I spent 2 years of my life earlier in life, in the earlier 2000s. I went on a sojourn to see if there really was God, or is this just something that I heard about in church my whole life? What real evidence is there out there? And if there really is a God, who the true and living God is, and if it is the true and living God, if it is the God of the Bible, what evidence is there for Yeshua, his Messiah? I am a Christian. I'm a Christ follower today. From having spent about 2 years looking at the natural, archaeological, historical, and scientific, unbridled science, all that has to offer. And it all points back to the God of Abraham, the God of Abraham, the true and living God, and his son, the Messiah, Yeshua. And what I'm pleased to say is in this verse of scripture, he says, I will listen to you. You will find me, provided you seek for me wholeheartedly. Those are two promises to God from us. I am grateful that even When I have been unfaithful, he is always faithful.
Amen.
Marty, I want to thank you for reminding me through your song, See Me, Here I Am. Thank you for reminding me of that through your song. May it be a blessing for others. Marty, you're a treasure. You're a genuine piece of music history, and we just want to thank you for being our very special guest today. Thank you, Marty.
Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for making me cry, Marty. We're going to wave goodbye to our friends, but what were you saying, Marty?
I want to add to something, if I may, and you don't have to put this in if you don't want to, but I was really felt lost when I wrote that song. And I was saying, God, are you real? How do I know you're real? What do I have to do? All kinds of stuff, because as you get older, you start facing a whole total different reality. And I remember flying to Mexico to go on a fishing trip with a bunch of guys that weren't Christians. And I'm thinking, how am I going to, the one guy that paid my way because I was broke at the time, I grew up with. And I was reading a book, How the Irish Saved Civilization. It's an amazing book. And in there, it was talking about St. Patrick and how he went to Ireland, which was a very barbaric country. And just through pure love, Jesus's love, that country became, a Catholic Christian country. And that hit me so hard that it's just love. That's what we want. We want love from the Father, love from our fellow man. And that turned me around, pulled me out of my depression. And I don't know why, but that was so significant at the time. And I think about all the things that we clutter our minds with on how to be a Christian, what it is to be a Christian. And when the Pharisees asked Jesus what the greatest commandment was, he said it was love. Love your neighbor as yourself, love your Father with your whole heart, mind, and soul. And that's it. So it made it super easy and boiled it down to that for me. And it turned a corner. So anyway.
Marty, thank you so much. This has been wonderful, and even had a good cry. That was a bonus. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate it, and hopefully we can do it again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're going to wave goodbye to our friends, but just stick around for one more moment. Take care, everybody. This is why, I meant to ask that before.
Take two.
We're going to take two.
Yep.
I'm going to do that whole
No,
intro.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I've got to do it, Marty. I cannot do it. I questioned that, and I forgot to ask.
Can you hold on one second?
Yes, sir.
We're going to have to cut into that because I need to charge.